So again, Dr. Blake Willard, been here for doing Christian education and just education in general for a little over 13 years, and moved into the homeschooling space almost 2 years ago. Just out of personal convictions, I really think that families are the best suited, and parents in particular, to lead their children's education. Problem is, for a lot of families, they don't always feel confident or equipped to do it. And so I've tried to take my background and my expertise and my focus on working with parents and partnering with them to give them the skills that they need to be able to do this confidently. And so everything that I do within Start Homeschooling, within the Homeschool Mastery Group, is to set you up as parents to feel confident and ultimately to have the tools to be more successful, big picture, as well as honed in on those specific day-to-day tasks. So that's what I'm here for. And we're going to start this presentation talking a little bit about definitions, because there's a lot of language out there about homeschooling, what it is and what it isn't. And if we don't start from the same starting place, then we don't always end at the same definition as well. And so I brought myself a little visual representation here. I know my computer blurring it out here. I have some oat milk. And I want to compare oat milk to the real stuff. Apparently this bottle, which tells me it's a combination of oats, sunflower oil, water, salt, and when you blend it all together, it becomes milk. But if you look over at the definition of milk, it's something very different, right? Opaque, white, fluid, rich in fat and protein, secreted by female mammal for the nourishment of their young, right? So something you won't find this secreted from any animal. It takes a lot of engineering to be able to process it. And the point is even though it calls itself milk, it's actually something different altogether. And Haley, I don't know if this is something that you got, but at least from what I understand, in Europe and a lot of other European countries, you're not allowed to call something milk that isn't, right? So you can call it an oat beverage, you can call it an oat drink, but it's not milk. And you can't call it as such. Unfortunately, in America, there's a lot of confusion because marketing is allowed to bend the truth a lot of times. And that's why I feel like this is such a good setup for homeschooling, because there's a lot of words about home education or homeschooling, a lot of definitions, and a lot of programs that want to sell you something that are not necessarily homeschooling in the fullest sense, at least as we'll define it here today. So one other story, just to kind of pivot, going along with this analogy, where I've seen this live. About a year ago, I was listening to a local social media influencer who has a pretty big following here internationally, but he's actually local to Las Vegas. And he mostly talks about business stuff, which is why I tend to listen to some of the things he says in finance. But he also talks about his faith and his family and his interests. And one day he started talking about homeschooling. And so obviously my interest was very much piqued. And I wasn't too surprised, because actually a lot of the super wealthy have found that homeschooling fits their family's needs better, right? Grant Cardone and Elon Musk are a couple of billionaires that are kind of famous for having done some form of homeschooling with their children. And so when this business influencer started sharing about what homeschooling actually looked like for his family, how easy it was clear to me that he was describing something a little different than homeschooling, again, as we would define it. He talked about how his kids they'd log into school on their computers, they'd complete their assignments, and then they'd spend the rest of the day with their family and with their parents. That means they didn't choose the subjects, they didn't choose the curriculum, they didn't choose the schedule, they didn't choose the expectations, they don't even provide the instruction. So there may be a lot of positive benefits to this format of education for a lot of families, fewer negative influences, more time together as a family, as a couple of examples, but it's not homeschooling. More accurately, this is what I would call school from home, right? And there's a difference. Many of us remember during the COVID pandemic, countries in disruption all over the world. In America, in 2020 and 2021, 77% of public schools and 73% of private schools transitioned to fully online or at least partially online learning, which means that most kids in most places, not only in the States, but all over the world, were doing some kind of distance learning or learning from home. And during that time, I started hearing a lot more parents talking about how they were homeschooling. And at least for what they knew, that's what they felt like they were doing, because their kids were online and many families didn't feel like they were learning anything. So parents were starting to supplement, they were starting to engage and do more directly than they had ever done before. But this online format is, again, something that I would call school from home. Even during this time, I was actually leading a private classical hybrid school, which means parents were part-time leading from home and part-time sending their children to school. And we were about the least technology institution you could imagine. And even we transitioned for a period of time to online learning because nobody knew what was happening at the start of the pandemic. So we were all trying to figure it out. And I'll just say it was rough. we didn't enjoy it, and we were glad to get back to the classroom setting. So this format, this online learning, it can share some of the benefits to homeschooling. There's fewer negative influences for a lot of families. There's more time together as a family. There may, though, be a lot that it lacks in comparison to what homeschooling includes. So homeschooling as a format of education offers more freedom and more flexibility than any other form of education. You can craft the program that you want, study what you want, when you want, how you want, from wherever you want, right? And this change, this often leads to a little bit of overwhelm because there's so much choice. There's so much. So when something isn't working, the nice thing about homeschooling is you can adapt, you can make changes, and you can try something new. And this is something that schools do not offer. This means that you can help your children, again, study what you think is most important for them to learn, and you can adapt it to how they need to learn. There's individualization to maximize their success. So it changes, but when change is necessary, rather, you don't have to ask anyone's permission. This is one of the big hangups I have for a lot of families is they're being told what to do from home. And this is really taking away so much that homeschooling offers, because what you get back when you decide to lead your children's education is choice, is opportunity, and freedom and flexibility. So circling back to this social media influencer who started what he was calling homeschooling, he had chosen a format of education that allowed his kids to be physically home, but it did not permit them to focus on the values of their home or the needs of their home, or to work around the schedule of their home, or even to pursue the interests of their home. So again, what I would say is it's not really homeschooling. A lot of parents do choose these online academies because selecting and guiding everything that your children do in their education can be intimidating. And even though I don't fault anyone for being intimidated by the challenge and not feeling fully prepared to jump into homeschooling, I think that when parents are better prepared to fully lead everything, they'll choose this definition of homeschooling that we're going to provide here every time. And so let's do that. Let's provide a very clear, hopefully succinct definition of what homeschooling is, at least as we're going to talk about it for the remainder of this time together. Homeschooling in its most basic form is 5 points. It's a curated education that is led by the parent or guardian. It's not answerable to any higher authority regarding the implementation or approach. It can be individualized, and it's typically not always brought about within the family's primary residence, right? Hence the word home. So let's talk about each of those points in greater detail. So a curated education, the selection of the content to be studied, curriculum, pedagogy, which is your educational approach, your schedule, your standards, are all decisions made by parents as the primary educator. So if someone else is deciding any of these things for you and you don't have a say, then it's not truly homeschooling, right? The power has to be in the parents' hands for you to be able to curate the education that you want for your children. And it's led by the parents. So the parent is leading the educational process, important caveat here, even if they're not teaching every subject, right? Taking the lead and having that full control over your children's education is what makes it truly homeschooling. It means that you're pulling together not only what is to be studied, but also ensuring that your child is either taught, tutored, or equipped with the resources to be able to attain the desired educational outcomes, right? So it means that you're putting the things in place to help you reach your educational goals, regardless of whether you're the one doing all of the teaching. You don't have to do it all in order to still provide a high quality home education. And then it's not answerable to any other higher authority with regards to your implementation or your approach. Basically, this just means the buck stops with you as the parents. You're the final authority. So to be true homeschooling, the parents have to have that complete authority to craft every component of the educational experience. I want you to think of yourself as the CEO of your homeschooling company, right? The CEO doesn't do everything in a company. It's just they have the final authority of what is being done, right? So everything filters up to the CEO to make that final decision. So while the CEO can go down and do the grunt work, they certainly don't have to. And that's the important distinction that I want you guys to understand as parents, when you lead your children's education, you don't have to do everything to still be the one guiding and directing them, right? And so, quick caveat here, no matter where we are in the world, there's very few places where the state or the government doesn't have some kind of regulation with regards to your homeschool. And this is the same thing for a company. Companies have standards that they have to submit to in order to be allowed to function, operate as a company, but it doesn't mean that the government tells them every single thing that they do with regards to their implementation approach. It's the same thing when it comes to home education. All right, and then the next point is individualization, the ability to individualize. Parents will find that both the needs and the interests of each of their children will differ. And so they can, you don't have to, but you can adjust accordingly to best suit the needs of each of your children's learning style. This could mean learning different content, different expectations, different schedules, or even a whole different approach for each child. Again, it's not a have to, it's a can, right? So just having that additional layer of flexibility to individualize based on the needs of our children, right? Sometimes our kids feel like they're born on different planets. And because of that, we need the ability to differentiate as best suits the needs of our children. And this is something that schools, again, can't do, at least in bulk, but we can do on this local level as a family. And then the last point, typically brought about within the home or the primary residence. So when we say home and homeschooling, it can literally mean the home, but it's not bound to be done in any one place. There's plenty of people in this community, on hell, I think you're one of them, who homeschools in different places and you travel. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to be able to do that. So when we say the home, because there's many parents that do this in different places, what we mean by the word home is really the thing around which the family centers. That is the idea of home that we're talking about in homeschooling. Home goes with us, right? It goes where our family goes. It's not just a place. And that's true for us when we teach our children too. Whether you're on the road, you're in another country, or you're in your own house, home goes with you where you go with your family. So pretty much the rest of this conversation then, with that definition in mind, let's talk about approach. Let's talk about best practices, things that we can do as a family to set ourselves up for success, regardless of your educational style, your learning style, your pedagogical approach. There's a lot of different words out there about how people teach, and these approaches will fit regardless of the various different styles that there are out there. So have any of you heard of the word analysis paralysis? This idea, there's so much information out there, it's hard to make a choice, right? It's hard to decide on anything. And that's, for many parents, when they move into homeschooling, finding the best approach leads to this analysis paralysis. If you just look up online homeschool curriculum, you're going to get 10 million different, things in your search bar that are trying to push you towards what they have to offer. And that's why what we do at the Homeschool Mastery Group is so different, because we're not telling you use our program, use our curriculum. We're trying to help parents differentiate and discern what is best for you as a family. So with so many options regarding how you may go about homeschooling, once parents decide to pursue this freedom and flexibility that comes with true homeschooling, there are just a lot of families that struggle to determine, okay, well, what do we do now? We've decided we want homeschool, but it just feels like there's so much information out there. There's so many options, and it's hard to discern what is the best thing for you. So the key is not to educate your children completely free of any boundaries, but rather, once you step into the great wide open of homeschooling, you start to put up boundaries and constraints to push you and your children towards specific educational goals. Meaning, we start in the great wide open, and then our family is unique, and we have particular values, and we have unique differences that help guide us and direct us to wean out some of the options that aren't a good fit for us as a family. And one example that I use in making sense of this is like refining a raw resource. We think of natural materials or natural resources, right? If I give you a bunch of a particular raw resource, think of I'm giving you some land with forest and with trees everywhere. Okay, well, if you want to turn those trees into something productive, you're going to have to start to do something to them, right? Until you start to constrain those resources towards some specific end, they don't really become anything useful. So the right boundaries and constraints are what take raw resources and turn them into something useful. Our children are just like that in a sense. They're like raw resources, bound up with potential, ready to be refined toward a specific end, right? And here's the thing. If I want to take those trees in the forest and harvest them to turn them into a boat, I have to I have to plane them, I have to turn them into boards, I have to shape them into a shape that will float on the water. But once I make it into a boat, it's going to be really hard to back up and decide I want to turn it now into a house, right? Because as you constrain yourself toward a specific end, you necessarily move further and further away from any other potential path, right? And so you can see how this analogy translates to our children's education. Not that we can't change and we can't go backwards, but as we start to direct our children somewhere, we're necessarily going to move further away from other options. So, and we get this because when our children are little, a lot of times we say they can do anything or they can be anything. And that idea and that sentiment runs across so many different families. We want to give our children the world. We want them to have so many different opportunities. But as they get older, that becomes less true, right? Because as they start to pursue something, they have to distance themselves further and further from everything else, right? It doesn't mean they can't be Renaissance people that have so many different skills. It just means, let's say I'm pushing my child to become a musical prodigy. Well, it's going to be hard 10 years down the road to then back up and say, actually, let's do athletics instead, right? So we have to choose something. It doesn't mean they can't play sports. It doesn't mean they can't, be good writers. These are all skills that are a part of the journey. But as we necessarily aim towards something, it just means those other things become further away towards that end. And think about each of us. We have professions. We have things that we do. And I do a lot of things, but ultimately, when it comes to my income, I typically focus on one main thing. And that's true for most people. It'll be true likely for our children as well. Maybe they'll have 100 different skill sets that are all marketable and they're doing them all at the same time, but it's not likely. Okay, so let's talk about general recommendations for the remainder of this discussion that will help you in this process of constraining your home education program towards the necessary end that you've defined to get you towards where you want to take your children into the future. So I have some recommendations, again, regardless of the approach that you take, meaning regardless of the educational or the pedagogical style that you pursue. I know Haley, for example, is interested in unschooling. That is one potential style. There's the classical approach. There's a Montessori approach. There's a Charlotte Mason approach. There's a lot of people who do a blended approach where they take what they love best of different styles of learning and they make it fit for their family, right? So regardless of what you choose with regards to your pedagogy or any other approach, these things will help your family. These recommendations will apply to you and will ultimately help you better determine what is the best educational style for you and your family, right? So I want to help each of us today constrain your home education. So at the start of every parent's homeschooling journey, you're going to face this boundless potential of nearly unlimited freedom and flexibility. And with this comes the overwhelming challenge of figuring out exactly what homeschooling approach you're going to take or what it will look like for you. Many parents are left with questions, things like, who do I know that's homeschooling? What curriculum do I use? What subjects do we study? How will I know that my child is getting a, quote, good education? Can I really teach my child? There's a lot of questions about self-doubt and confidence that come up. How will they be socialized is the most common critique that you'll hear from other people. And the list goes on. So in the beginning, parents tend to fixate on the wrong things, and they tend to overlook the key constraints that will actually make homeschooling far less intimidating once they're answered. Because again, when we constrain our program toward a specific end, it eliminates a lot of information that just isn't relevant to us as a family. So that's why the first thing I recommend a new homeschooling family does, or someone maybe who you haven't done this before, is starting with a self-evaluation. It's starting by asking yourself the questions necessary to figure out the kind of program that you need. And without a little bit of self-reflection, you won't just stumble upon the perfect program, right? You have to be honest with yourself, probably with your spouse, and then ultimately with your children to decide between all of those factors what makes the most sense for you. And this is something in Homeschool Mastery Group that I have made available so that you can take advantage of, rather than trying to figure out what questions you need to ask and answer, to do it for you. So let me run through some examples of that. What am I running from? That's a big question I ask parents at the start. What am I running from? Meaning, why are we choosing home education and leaving these other things behind? Why do these options not make sense for us? We don't want to be fixed in one place. We don't like the traditional school system. We think our children should learn other subjects that they don't teach in school. But there's so many things that we want to know why these don't make sense for us, so that in the next question, what am I running toward? We now have some motivation and some guidance and some direction. We don't just want to run from things. We also want to have a future that we're looking towards. And so What are you hoping to pursue with homeschooling? And then we need to constrain that with, what are my limitations? What kind of help do I have? Do I have my spouse's support? Do I have family nearby? Are there other friends or educators or homeschoolers who I can call on to get advice? Do I have an online community like the ones that some of us are a part of? What kind of help do I have? What are my children's needs, right? Your children are going to be different from anyone else, including you at times. And that means we need to be considerate of the things that they need in order to thrive, in order to learn best. And if we factor those into the way that we create our program, which we can do in a homeschool and they don't do in traditional schools, then it may mean we can create an educational program where they're set up to thrive from the beginning, rather than struggling, trying to fit them into a box that just doesn't make sense for them. What will set my child up for success? What things might inhibit my child from learning? When I say this, does my child shut down? If we get a late start, does it get them out of sorts? If they don't eat breakfast, are they in a bad mood, right? Knowing the things that help your children be successful, just because you've been their parents their entire life. Therefore, you're best qualified to be able to answer some questions about them, to know what's going to get them set up for success. What things might inhibit their learning, right? What are my goals for my child through education? I want some things that are specific to my family that schools often don't care about. For instance, faith is a big part of our family. It's something that we do every day, regardless of whether we're doing school, right? And so I want to make sure that my program is supportive of our faith and our values. And so we build that into our program. What is my goal for my child's education? Do I want them to be a musical prodigy? Do I want them to be an athlete? Do I want them to be an entrepreneur? Ultimately, as they get older, they'll be able to decide on some of these things. But again, we're going to push them in a direction. So knowing where we're trying to take them and for what purpose is a really important question to answer. Do we have any habits that are counterproductive right now towards that goal? If we tend to be on our phones all night scrolling, is that helping my child's education, or is it creating a habit that's going to make it hard for them to learn? Are there any habits that help us towards our goal that we want to strengthen and reinforce and keep in place, right? This is a good time to rethink what we do as a family and to make some changes, since you're already making this big change through home education. And then what are my greatest areas of challenge? And then what are my greatest strengths? Knowing what makes you tick, what sets you up for success, and also the things that you're good at. It's okay to brag on yourself and say, I really am good at this. I really like this. And to make that a big part of your child's education. I think it's so important for our kids to see that we're good at things. And so that in itself is very constructive and worth building into your home education, just so you can be a source of confidence for your children in the given things that are important to you. Okay, so the purpose of the self-evaluation is to help you identify your constraints. And once you understand the constraints imposed on you, such as time, work schedules, alongside the self-imposed constraints like faith, values, and your preferences, then you're going to have a much clearer vision for the kind of homeschool program that you both want and need. Again, because you're eliminating so many options when you say, I need this, I don't want this, I don't like that, I do want this, right? You're pushing other options out of the way. You're eliminating searches on the search bar, basically. But I do have a really important warning and caveat for anyone. If you don't consider your constraints and to factor them into your homeschooling program, these are things that I can almost guarantee will happen. You'll experience stress, frustration, and potentially burnout. And I have seen a lot of homeschool families burn out and quit, and they never want to look back because they tried it, they overwhelmed themselves, it didn't work out for them, and they say something like, we're not meant for homeschooling, or we just can't homeschool. And the truth is, what I always tell parents that fit into that box is more than likely what you found is you didn't have the right program for your family. If you think about it, anyone with the perfect program, perfectly catered to the needs of their family, is going to be best set up for success, because no school can 100% guarantee a perfectly catered program for your children, right? You can do it as a family, but it means that you have to factor in the parents' needs just like the children's needs. But when you put all those things together, it's going to create success in a way that far surpasses what you would find in a traditional school. So here's that first and most important constraint that I want to share with each of you. It's understanding your why. The big reason why homeschooling makes the most sense for you as a family. Your why is one of the most critical factors to consider. For example, if you're homeschooling because you want to reduce negative influences, then that online academy might be all you need, because it's going to take your children away from a lot of the other children that you don't want them to be around. If your goal is more time as a family, then again, that might make sense for you. But here's the thing I found. Most people who are gung-ho about homeschooling, who are really excited about it, they want way more than just one or two things. They don't want to compromise on what they believe, what's most important for their children, what they want them to learn. And so if you refuse to settle on things like who your children spend their time with, giving them a learning environment that best suits their learning style, choosing these subjects that excite both you and them, incorporating practical skills that are often missing from traditional schools, things like finance, cooking, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, prioritizing family time, and crafting routines that support your children's needs, or avoiding the traditional 8-hour desk-bound school day where your children are stuck in what can feel for them sometimes like prison all day long. And then the freedom to travel and explore at your convenience. If one or more of these options make sense for you or are part of your reason for homeschooling, then your why requires you to homeschool, because no other school is going to make sense of helping you fill out all those options. Okay, so your why demands homeschooling, which is why the only form of education that can actually accommodate all the things that you say you want, the values that you have, the hopes that you have for your children, is homeschooling. And so with that now, how do we make sense of the homeschool that we have for our family? Because again, your family is unique. They're different from any other family, which means that I can't give you a program and say, just do this, and it work for everyone, right? There is no one size fits all family because every family is different. And so the first constraint after defining your why that I recommend for a family is defining your mission, your values, and your goals as a family. So after the why step, your mission, values, and goals are the foundational elements that provide your family with direction on your homeschooling journey. So if we were to think about looking at a map, your mission is the end goal. It's the destination. It's where the treasure is at. And that's what you're aiming for your children. And they're on this journey with you. Hi, Danielle. So your children's education, this mission represents the ideal that you want to instill into your children and that you'll pursue together. But your values, these are the core principles that define your family's identity and serve as signposts along the journey. So again, think about having your treasure map. Your mission is the destination that you're aiming for, but your values show that you're moving in the right direction. They're those check marks along the way. And then your goals are the milestones that mark your progress toward your mission. These should include both big picture goals and more achievable short-term goals. So they remind both you and your children that you're making progress. So again, using that I want my child to be a musical prodigy, and this is the part of the goal. Let's say as a family, one of our values is hard work. Well, learning a particular piece of music that they can play by memory would be a milestone or a goal that we can set along the journey, so that as they move towards that goal, they know when they reach it. And then once they move beyond it, they can look back and say, oh, I don't suck. I'm not terrible. I have done things. And that's what your goals will do, because they're either going to motivate you as you look into the future, or once they've been completed by your children, they'll look back on them and they'll be reminders that they've made progress and they've made success as a part of your homeschooling journey. And I find for parents, this is an encouragement to you as well, because sometimes you need to be reminded that your children are making progress. And if you don't set out some things that can track that progress, then you may be discouraged because you just don't know if your children are going anywhere positively. And so this is one of the values of setting goals and then documenting progress along the way, because it's just an encouragement and a reminder, separate from record keeping or any other things that we talk about elsewhere, that just adds value to keep everybody motivated that you're moving towards a particular end. All right, so the next recommendation is selecting subjects, meaning we have this great opportunity to study the things that we want to study, to be excited about the things that we're excited about, and to make it a part of our children's education. And most parents that I've talked to want to fold in things that they teach their children that they just aren't teaching in most schools. Things like financial literacy, critical thinking, home economics, life skills, cooking, right? Are as a part of your home. Why not use the things in your home to be a part of what you teach your children and give them credit for the fact that they are valuable and worth learning? Right? So it's a fantastic opportunity to engage your children by incorporating both their interests into their education and fostering a love of lifelong learning. If you allow them to learn not only the things that you think are important, but the things that they're actually interested in, then your children will have free, inherent motivation to push towards something. And those motivators will keep them going even through the stuff that they don't always love. Right? Your child may not love math, but it may be a means to an end that they are excited about. Like though my daughter is young, she has this little book on rocket science memorized. And she, even the other day I was carrying her to the park. And I says, with lift and thrust, and she points, she says, we can go to the moon. And that's it. There's this concept, this idea that she's grasping. But guess what? There's going to be a lot more than lift and thrust. She's going to have to learn some equations if she wants to go to the moon, which means maybe she will be motivated by a picture of something that she can be one day, rather than a concept that is holding her back from that. Right? So we make those concepts a part of the journey rather than the end goal itself. And so many times in traditional schools, they say, do math because math is important, but they don't give you a why. They don't give you a dream or a picture or a vision. And that's what we can do with homeschooling. And so when we choose our subjects, this is a really important thing, that we just attach something that is exciting, that we're aiming towards as that end. And then the next one, as we transition, recommendation that I have for everyone is crafting your routines. So routines are critical to homeschooling success, and honestly, they're often overlooked, if not completely discounted altogether. Your routines are going to provide structure and help integrate your mission, your values, and your goals into everyday life. They're also going to support you in success throughout your learning day. Routines, here's why I love routines, because if I'm sick as a parent and I can't get out of bed and I can't help my kids today, if they have been doing the right routines every single day, even if I am slumped over on my pillow, they're going to know what to do to get started, what things they should do. And they're going to have the habits formed from doing them day in and day out. Even if I can't provide instruction, they're going to be moving forward still towards the right direction, because your routines will support you in your homeschooling effort. They're not everything, but they are this undergirding layer of support that will help move you towards, again, those goals that you've set for yourself. So I recommend breaking these down as simply as possible into 3 main areas: your morning routines, your school day or your midday routines, and then your evening routines, just to keep it simple. And your morning routines might be, for example, making your bed, hygiene, self-care, brush your teeth. Maybe it's Bible reading or journaling or reviewing the previous day's concepts. The things that you do to get you started, to be prepared for success. Right? We've all woken up late when we're supposed to be off to work, to a meeting or something, and we're just out of sorts because we missed all the things that we do, right? That set us and orient us for success, right? So these are what your routines do for yourself and for your children. And your morning routines especially, get them set up for success. They're the things that precede the formal instruction or learning that they do. And then your school day routines are their study habits, or their daily reading, or their journaling, or do they check the whiteboard and they check off the list of the things they're supposed to be doing? Whether it's extremely structured or not very, there should still be a sense of order that we can provide for our children that will give them some guidance and direction, even if we have a little bit more of, we'll say, a freestyle when it comes to learning. And then evening routines, it's wrapping up the day. It's reinforcing habits. It's reinforcing what's been learned. It's bringing closure and conclusion. It's going to bed on time at a particular time. That's a routine, so that we are, again, set up for another day's success as we move into the next day. And then this next one is again one that can often be overlooked, and it's crafting your learning environment. For some people, if on hell, you're traveling around the world, you're going to different countries. How do you create a learning environment when you're always on the go? Well, it is possible. And I think it's a vital part of homeschooling. And I recommend designating a specific space where you do your schoolwork. And that space can change, because not all of us have the luxury of having a particular room that we can just set aside and make it to school, right? So how do we set ourselves up to be successfully? Well, we can create routines and expectations around the environment that we create. For some world traveling families, I talk about having your homeschool in a backpack. But then when it comes time to actually sit down and do your work, where's your phone? Is it nearby? Do you have pencils and pens ready on hand? Do you have maybe a pad that you roll out that is your workspace, so that you are just creating an environment that you set up to do learning? If, like my family, if you do your work at the table, then we also use the table for other things. So we set up school, and when we're done, we break school down. There is a routine that goes along with creating the learning environment, where we're doing school right now. We're doing learning. We are engaged in a particular task. So all the other distractions necessarily, they don't fit into that mold. And when we're done, we relinquish the table back to table time. So we pack up our materials, we put away our pencils, we put away, the pads and the things that we have different set out to create that environment, and we release it back for ordinary use, right? Because when we're creating an environment, it is for a specific purpose, right? So if the purpose of this place that we set up is to learn, then we try to create a place where all those other distractions are not permitted. So even if I would recommend you were getting in an argument with your children or they were arguing with one another, we would leave the learning environment because we don't argue in school or in the place where we do our learning. We go fix that somewhere else, and then we come back because this place is designated for one thing, for constructive learning. And then we pack up and we release it to food, to fellowship, to fun, to all the other things that your kids might want to do in that space. And this can be set up in a backpack regardless of where you are. It's just creating a culture around the environment that you do your learning in with your kids. And once you lock in that routine, it just becomes a part of how they do learning, which you can imagine may set them up for success in life too, because they're going to have to create an environment where they can work, whether it be one on the go or in any given area. And we want them to know how to be constructive regardless of where they are. So there's honestly so much more that I could say in each of these areas. And I do cover all of them in a lot greater depth in my online courses. We do live coaching every week where I guide parents through refining and reframing their homeschool program to make it work for their specific needs. I help parents not only articulate their goals for their children, but also I seek to hold them accountable to reaching those goals. Because one of the things that I found is, yes, I can have a great plan, but if I know somebody's going to ask me about that plan, I'm a lot more likely to fulfill it, right? One of my hobbies is I compete in jiu-jitsu. And if someone asks me, are we going to see you in practice this week? Well, if they ask me, I'm about 90% more likely to show up because I now have that layer of accountability of somebody who's expecting me to be there. And that's one of the things that this community can do for one another, and that I seek to be as a coach, as an advisor, as a consultant, as a source of help for parents who are transitioning to homeschooling, and they don't just want a pre-packaged one-size-fits-all program. They want the one that works perfectly for their family and can grow and adapt and change as your family changes. We just had our second baby. Our family is changing, right? Things are changing. Thank you. And she's beautiful and she's healthy and we're excited. But let me tell you, our routines are out of whack. So things are changing. And so now we're adapting and adjusting. And to know that you have the ability and the freedom to do that without everything going sideways brings a lot of confidence. And so this is one of the reasons I'm really excited to have each of you here today, is because we're doing something new with the Homeschool Mastery Group that we haven't done before. Not only are we waiving the admission fee for all families, so there's a $1,500 fee that current members have all paid to be a part of this community, and they've had special things to make that worth their while, but we're waiving admission and we're actually doing free trials now. So we have a week free trial where you can join and you can jump in. And one of the reasons I would really want to share this is because I'm doing a 7-day challenge, a routine revamp for families. So if you're thinking about creating a goal and pursuing it and having the routines that reinforce it and set you up for success, then I would love to invite you to join and to participate in this routine revamp, to take advantage of this free 7-day trial. It's not, obviously it's free. You can cancel it anytime. You don't have to stay on, but I would love for each of you to jump in and to participate, because I think that there's not only is there going to be huge help in having more of us there, because the accountability that comes with letting other people know what we're doing, holding our own feet to the fire with regards to getting it done, and tracking progress as well as when things aren't going right, having some help to guide us along the way. So I'm going to be setting out each day a different aspect of that challenge to help you define and set the goals and then create the routines to aim at those goals and then to start to pursue those together. So would love to invite each of you to be a part of this homeschooling family. And if it's something that you're interested in, then I'm actually going to share a link in the chat. Like I said, it's free to join. So there's a 7-day trial. You can click on that, leave that tab open. It's available to you if that's something that you're interested in. I'd love to see you there. Because again, I just think that there's more power when we do this together. But either way, if you're not already a part, I think everyone here is a part of our free Start Homeschooling community. this is another layer of a resource. So Homeschool Mastery Groups, where all of my coursework, all of these ideas are there laid out for you that you can go through at your own pace. That self-evaluation that I would encourage you to do, that's there for you, and you can take that on your own time. I also have something for those that are here today that I would like to offer, which is I have something called the Homeschool Readiness Assessment. I know actually Haley's done this before with her husband, and this is something that they found a lot of value in. But basically, it's going to give me a chance to get an idea of your constraints as a family, where you can let me know and let yourselves know as you start to ask some of these questions in the self-eval. What are the things that you need? What are the factors that are relevant to your family? What are your constraints? And then I'm actually offering a free 30-minute evaluation to go through with your family and to start just give you a little bit of direction, hopefully to guide you closer towards the program that you want for your family. And at the end of that seven day challenge, then we'll also have a follow-up eval, again, totally free, follow-up eval where we can see if you're on track with the things that we've talked about and if you're starting to make progress as a family towards the things that you want. So that's available. I would love for you to join. Again, the link is right here in the chat. So if possible, be a part of this revamp. Be a part of crafting routines. This starts to set you up to meeting these goals. And let's not just, I guess, talk about the kind of education we want for our children, or talk about who we want them to become. Let's take some tangible steps for how to get there. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click the link. But otherwise, the remainder of our time is set aside for conversation. And I don't have to be the only one talking, but you can feel free if you'd like to unmute yourselves. And it's a Q&A time. So any of these concepts, I'd love to hear from you guys if there are any questions, and let's chat. Let's talk about it.
I just want to say that I've been with Blake, and I've been part of the Homeschool Mastery Group since the beginning of the year. And the transformation that I've gone through and my husband has gone through wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Blake's group, because we did the assessment. We believed we were on very different paths. Actually, we were more aligned than we thought. And with that, we've been able to come together, have the discussions that we were needing to have. We struggled in that area when it came to homeschooling, because I had my vision, Brian had his, and we weren't really connecting in that. And we've still got a ways to go. I'm not going to lie. It's a journey, right? So we're working on it, but we wouldn't have had, I guess, the tools that we needed. And I didn't know that I needed those tools until they were put in front of me. And it's a bit like you were saying with the accountability. When I used to come to those weekly sessions, I had something in my mind that I wanted to discuss or talk about or work through. And then it might even be something from the group changed all of that because somebody mentioned something else, but it gave me something else to work on that week. And it did. It held me accountable. So it's transformed us, and it allowed me to as well relax in my method for the year, because I was really trying hard at the beginning to push and drive, but it's allowed me to take a more relaxed approach and start with those things that you just mentioned, like the routines, the rhythms. I've focused on not your typical academic things, but, you know, getting prepared for school and getting the right learning attitude for learning and things like that are key to setting up the future for our homeschool. And it's been, couldn't have done it without you. So thank you, Blake. So if anyone's on the fence, like, it works. It really does.
Hey, Haley is like, she's this superhero when it comes to being an advocate, because she drank the Kool-Aid. She tried it, and she, all I can say is that she's seen results that she created. But sometimes we feel like we have to figure all these things out on our own. If I do jujitsu, I'm still doing the work. But if someone shows me how to do a move, let me tell you, it makes it a lot easier than trying to figure it out for myself. And that is really my heart and purpose in this community, because why would we struggle alone? Why would we have to figure everything out? You don't have to be the expert in everything. You're the expert in your children. And so I can't give you that, but what I can do is provide some things that strengthen and reinforce what you already are. You already are the parent. You already are teaching your children. I can't take that away from you. I can support you. I can give you some steps, hopefully, that will not waste your time and will help add value and add time to your family, because wasting time is painful. And just like we talked about with those raw resources, you start pursuing the wrong direction and you figure it out, Now you have to go backwards before you can go somewhere forward. And that's painful for a lot of us. I've gone backwards plenty of times in my life on the wrong things. So yeah, that's the goal. Any other questions or comments? Feedback is always appreciated.
Hey, Blake, thank you for taking the time. Ms. Haley, thank you for sharing. I hope you guys can hear me.
Clear.
I appreciate your testimonies. I understand what you mean. I think everything resonated with us. Hey, interesting fact about yourself with the jiu-jitsu. We're fellow jiu-jitsu practitioners over here. I think the whole family is, in one way or another, learning. And yes, you're right. It is easier and better when someone takes the time to reach out and say, hey, look, I've been there before, and maybe I can save you some time, some headaches. Why don't you do it like this? Why don't you try this out? I like the approach you're taking, which is not to be just giving out orders or like, hey, this is what works. It's more of, let's find out where you're at, see what the constraint is. Let me help you. Just grease your wheels. Maybe you already got something going on. It is okay to understand that some of the stuff that you've done as a family is working, and maybe other people need your testimony because other people might not want to take that leap forward and learn and reach out to someone like yourself and say, hey, look, maybe I'm struggling here, or maybe I don't know this. And I hope that by sharing what we do in both languages, and hopefully we can have something like this in Spanish soon, we can bring in more families, because I believe that's the best way we're going to learn. I know my name is the only one in there, but you all know that it doesn't just take one person to run it. The rest of the family is there. It's my wife, Jackie, the reason behind the scenes, the reason why everything actually functions and works. And so just wanted to take some time to say thank you for taking some time out of your schedule and, giving us all this information. I just clicked, I just joined. I was waiting for, get in there. And so we're going to take advantage of your generosity and learn as much as we can from you. We hope to stay on 2025 the whole year. I think if we do one full year of homeschooling, my family is going to be way better than we were now. So thank you both for being here.
Hey, Angel. Is Angel?
It is Angel. I prefer Angel. My name is Angel. So every time I introduce myself, everywhere I go, my name is Angel. But if it's rough on your tongue, Angel is fine.
I'll do my best. I'm good. You said you're in Mexico City, right?
Well, we come from there. We're from there. We
Oh,
travel.
apparently.
So we were there in Guatemala. We were there in Mexico. We're in Phoenix, Arizona right now, and we're planning to travel soon. So we're going to Peru, Argentina. The point is to be able to get this done, and we're going to probably take the approach you said, which is the homeschooling in a backpack, more like a briefcase because there's plenty of us. But I want to be a professional when it comes to this. I want to be able to get to a new country, book the Airbnb, find a place to do so, find a place outdoors and indoors to do what we do here in the States and do it in both languages so they don't lose out in practicing English, and they can teach other children and who don't have the opportunity to learn from English-speaking children, and vice versa. My children get the benefit of getting the experience from native Spanish speakers, because it's different. Spanish is different in everywhere we travel. So I'm looking forward to being equipped with the right tools for my family, but also to be able to share them as we travel along.
Yeah. Well, I think these ideas work in all languages, so I'm excited for you guys. I'll definitely need your help on the Espanol side, but holy moly, it's good. It'll be great to have you. And I was only asking about Mexico City because we have an affiliate gym there. And if you were still there, I was going to ask you to check them out.
Oh yeah, who?
Jiu-Jitsu. It's called Atlas Grappling, Mexico City. So I know the guys there, and they come and compete with us typically because I'm here in Las Vegas, and World Championships is always here. So
yeah, you guys have this championship coming up, the competition here on Thursday this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Are you competing?
I'm not this year. We're not with the new baby.
Yeah, I hear you. I was going to say that's amazing. That's a superhuman scheduling there, because you new father, second baby, the schooling community. You've got a network that's going, and jiu-jitsu. That's just impressive.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to do it. I had a chance to roll with the World Championship this last week, or with the World Champion, and I threw out my back the morning of, and I couldn't go. So I was kind of
Of course, yes, you could expect that. practicing the
That's
champions.
life.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to hold everyone. I guess we got a few minutes left for this hour, but I'm excited you're here. I just want you guys to know that this trial, this is open now. So if you know someone who you might be interested in participating in it, share, because this routine revamp, I'm going to be on every single morning, but also be recording conversations. So if you can't be there, that's okay. We'll post it after with some attached kind of structure and some challenges for you. Angel, I would recommend checking out the classroom because that self-evaluation and talking about just a little bit of guidance for building your family's mission and your values. If you haven't already thought through those things, step by step. The videos are short, so you can kind of bite it off a little bit at a time. But you and Jackie together, I think that would be a great resource for you to check out and chip away at. And yeah, so I just want to make sure that you knew that there's a lot more work there than there is in our free community. So that's where most of my effort's been, and it's a small community right now. So there'll be lots of time for you. So if you need anything, DM me, shoot me a message, shoot me a video message, and I will be sure to help. Cool. Danielle, did I see your hand raised?
Yes, you did. I just wanted to apologize for being late because on my email, I saw 10 and I didn't notice it said Mountain Standard Time. So I was confused. I thought it started at 10. I'm like, oh no. So yeah, I apologize for that. But also wanted to say, even just from my experience of being a part of the Start Homeschool, there's been so much value that I've been able to glean from that. And I appreciate everyone who's like helped and just shared their journey, and then just like the different tips and insight that people shared and ideas. It was so valuable, and I'm excited to hop back in and just like reconnect. And yeah,
let's go.
Yeah,
Daniel, you've been a great resource. Again, guys, especially the Start Homeschool community, it's free. So if you have friends who need help, just those first steps, like share. Also, the thing when I ran private schools, I told families, you're responsible for building a community that you want to be a part of. And that's the thing. So if you have people that you love, that you want to do life with, even if it's from 10,000 miles away, we can do that, and it's as good as we make it. So that's my challenge. That's my call out. We all get back what we put in. Any sacrifice is never in vain when it's done with the right spirit. And so that's my hope for what this community can and will be. I don't think it's in vain, and I hope I can help as many families as possible, even if it's just with one single mind shift that leans them closer to their children. I think your children will benefit, and if your children benefit, the world is going to benefit. Okay, so that's the goal. I'm glad that each of you were here today, and I will definitely. This is recorded, so it will definitely be posted and available for review or for whoever if you want to share it. I wish you all the best. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Hasta la vista. We'll talk.
Thank
We'll talk
you.
today.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Adios.
Adios.
bye-bye.
Bye.